and welcome to Legal Affairs. My name is Diamond Litty, and I'm the public defender for the 19th Judicial Circuit. And we have a wonderful guest and a wonderful topic today. With us is Joe Cracchiola, is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
And he is the 19th Circuit Administrator for Probation and
Community
Parole.
Corrections.
Yeah, Community Corrections. And I know some of you out there are saying, what in the world is Community Corrections? We're going to find out about that. But before we do that, Joe, you have been around for a long time within our community and within our system, if you will. So let's begin with you. How long have you lived in our area, and how long have you held this position?
Well, in our area, I've lived about 22 years.
Okay.
I'm originally from Broward County.
Okay.
Born and raised in Fort Lauderdale. And that's where I started my career with the department, actually. And then I moved.
And let's stop just one second. The department, that's the Department of Corrections, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Obviously, you and I know that and know what that means. But for those who are watching, what is the Department of Corrections?
Well, the Department of Corrections is the final stop in the legal system,
right,
so to speak. Once the law enforcement makes the arrest, the courts decide the outcome. The defendants come to us for rehabilitation, basically.
Right, and probation.
Probation, either could be either prison, as you well know, or probation, or
right,
both, a mixture of both.
Right.
But yes, the Department of Corrections is the authority on that.
Yeah, the sentencing part, so to speak.
Correct.
Okay. Now, people talk about parole, and again, we're going to get back to you in a second, but there's no more parole, is there? It's probation and or prison, correct?
Correct. Now, the Florida Commission on Offender Review, right, is formerly the Florida Parole Commission, and they do have a supervised release program, conditional release, they
right,
have conditional medical release.
Right.
So inmates can earn gain time, and they can get that gain time serving the remainder of their sentence in the community.
Right, but as far as the word parole, that's really been abolished, and probation has taken over, correct?
Correct.
And I understand, because some people were sentenced years ago when the parole system still was in effect. There are some people still on parole, but those are people that have been sentenced years and years ago,
right,
correct?
those cases are few and far between now.
Right.
Most of our release cases, if they're not being released on probation,
right,
they're coming out on the conditional release.
Right, gotcha. Okay, and we're going to talk about conditional release in a minute here too. Okay, so go ahead. You were in Broward. You came up here.
Yes.
22 years ago.
Via Palm Beach County, I
right,
served a stint in Circuit 15 as a probation officer, and then my wife and I settled down here in Circuit 19. And this is where we established our roots, and I've worked my way up to the position I'm in now.
Okay, which is pretty impressive. You were, and I don't want to diminish the import of a probation officer, but you literally started as a probation officer, which is not the lowest, but the bottom rung of a ladder that now you basically head.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's not uncommon in the department. Our secretary, Ricky Dixon, he started as a corrections officer. Our assistant secretary,
and
Joe
when you
Winkler,
say a secretary and assistant secretary, these are the people that oversee probation in the entire state of Florida, correct?
Yes. Mr. Dixon oversees the department. He is the corrections secretary.
Okay.
And Joe Winkler is our assistant secretary of community corrections. And again, both of them started at the bottom and have worked their way up to where they're at.
Which is pretty cool, because then they really know what it's like and what, the ins and outs of all of it. Okay, let's back up a minute. A probation officer, and so wait a minute, let's back up again. So you've been the head For how long now?
Just about a year.
Oh, okay. So good.
It's still
good.
relatively new to me.
And how many people do you oversee, Joe?
Oh, we have about 200 employees.
And that's for the entire 19th
That's for the 19th
circuit,
circuit, correct.
which is Okeechobee, Martin, Indian River, and St. Lucie.
And St. Lucie, correct.
Okay. Let's start with the basics. What does a probation officer do?
Well, a probation officer, first and foremost, enforces the conditions levied by the judge.
Right,
Okay.
right.
When a person is, when an individual is sanctioned for an offense, whether they plead no contest or are found guilty,
Right.
And in lieu of going to jail or prison,
Right.
A judge may sentence him to a period of him or her a period of supervision, and then we'll levy conditions as a sanction.
As appropriate.
As
Like,
appropriate.
for example, if it was a drug offense, the court may order the probationer to get drug tested every week or every month, correct? And
Correct.
so your probation officer, you before, now the people that you oversee, would actually make sure and enforce the fact that they are doing that. They're getting drug tested once a week. If they have a curfew, they're going to be home at 10 o'clock every night, whatever the case may be, correct?
That is correct.
Now, what happens if the probationer doesn't follow the judge's orders and violates probation? What happens then?
Any number of things. Normally, it may be back in the old days of zero tolerance, it would just be submit a violation report, get a warrant, and that individual goes to jail on a violation of probation.
Right. Now, they still, so people understand, if a warrant is issued for a violation of probation, that doesn't mean they're guilty as charged. There still can be a hearing, a trial, a judicial trial, to determine whether or not they indeed violated probation or the conditions of their probation as the probation officer has indicated, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
yes.
so they still have a chance to be found not guilty of that probation violation.
Correct.
Okay, but anyway, again, we're trying to flesh this out for those people who haven't, and most of us have not been in the criminal justice system. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
The main difference, I think, with a regular trial where
Right.
they still a determination of guilt or innocence,
Right.
and a violation of probation trial is that there's no jury.
Right.
The judge makes a decision based on the preponderance of the evidence.
Right. So there is also a different, and that's a good thing you're pointing out, there's a different standard too, correct? Okay, criminal trial beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. This is more of a civil standard, which is not as difficult to prove, if you will.
Right, not as high, as you would say.
Right. And you started to talk about something, and then I want to talk, because I'm so proud of what you all are doing right now. You talked about years ago there was zero tolerance, whatever. And I know that you don't just hold people's hand. It's not like a diversion court where they get second, third, fourth chances to do the right thing. Obviously, you have to enforce the conditions that the court has imposed, but there's a little leeway, and you guys work with the clients, correct?
Yes. The probation officer has options now.
Right. And did that come from the secretary?
That came from actually the legislature.
Okay.
Starting with the governor,
Right.
and it made its way into statute.
Right.
We now have an alternative sanctions program where if a certain violation is committed,
Right.
the officer has the authority to sanction him or her right there on the spot,
Right.
Without having to go through the whole VOP process.
Right. And give me an example of that, Joe.
All right. A positive urinalysis,
Right.
which are one of our more frequent violations. The officer has now the authority to order that offender to go
Right.
to drug treatment
Right.
in lieu of going through the formal process of
Gotcha.
getting a warrant, going to jail, going back before the judge for a
Right,
VOP hearing,
right.
and then ultimately, 9 times out of 10, they would get the same sanction.
Right, right.
So-
No, I understand. Okay. So now if you're a probation officer for a probationer who has a curfew, for example, do the officers literally go to the house, knock on the door, and make sure they're there?
Yes,
Does that happen?
the officers are required to make personal visits to the residents during curfew hours to ensure that the individual is there.
Okay. What I started to talk about it, and we got off on another subject, but the zero tolerance, and again, you know, you've been in the system a long time too, Joe. We have witnessed pendulum swings back and forth. You know, years ago, it was, you know, no, zero tolerance. No, we don't care about rehabilitation. We don't care about anything but punishment, punishment. Then it swings, and then it's all about rehabilitation. Then it swings to the middle where it's kind of punishment, rehabilitation. I would say, in my opinion, and please give me yours, that we're kind of in the middle now, where yes, there's punishment that we all agree on and agree with, but there is a softer approach, edge to it, in that there's punishment coupled with rehabilitation, correct?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more that
Okay.
we are in that middle ground that you just described. Yes.
Right. So, and again, something that I'm very proud of your department, and it's not that way throughout the state, you have instituted some really cool, wonderful programs for probationers that you don't have to do for them to help with their recovery, with their rehabilitation, to help make sure that they're not back being your probationers and back within the system time and time again. So tell us about some of those, because they're really neat.
Well, I wish I could take credit for them, but we do have 2 programs in particular that I'd like to discuss today. One is our Face It program, and that was developed by our Assistant Secretary Joe Winkler through his own experiences when he was a probation officer, and being in the position that he's in now, he has the ability to have all the research and the data to
Promote it.
Yes, and he saw for himself that within the first 30 to 90 days, some 22% in a single year they did a study. 22% of violations that were submitted to the court were of offenders who had only been on for 30 to 90 days of probation, of supervision. So it was decided that it was just from a lack of information that these offenders were violating their probation. So Face It was developed as a way to basically break down probation.
So there's no one who violates because they just didn't get it.
That's our goal.
Right.
That's our goal. Right. Well, and figure when someone comes in from court, first of all, they've just sat through court, so their mind is a blender, and then they have to go and sit with the probation officer. The probation officer's giving information right and left. The probation officer's probably
telling them what it's about.
Right. It's unrealistic to think that offender is going to retain most of the information they receive.
Right.
So Face It is designed to help that offender retain the information in a casual, informal setting. And we encourage family and friends to attend as well with them so that they can be there for support.
Well, is this like a group setting, or is it a one-on-one with the person?
The Face It is designed to have a group setting. And what we do is we have seminars after hours after office hours
Wow.
at the probation office.
So they can work and do this.
Right.
Okay.
The hope is that it doesn't
They
interfere with their
do.
work
Yeah,
schedule.
sure.
They can come and bring family. They can bring friends. It's very informal. We have a PowerPoint. We have a motivational video that we show. And basically, it just breaks down each step, what the officer's responsibilities are, what the offender's responsibilities are.
Gotcha.
We describe the resources and all the referrals that need to be made.
Right.
So when they leave, they should have a good grasp of what's going to be required of them
right.
to
What's
succeed.
expected of them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Now, is this required, Joe, or is it voluntary?
It's voluntary now. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So they don't have to. So shame on them if they don't take advantage of it. Really. Correct.
Right.
Okay.
But the statistics show that people, the individuals who do
Go through
go
this.
to the Face It seminar tend to successfully complete their supervision.
Wow. So when did this start, Joe?
It started a couple years ago.
Okay.
And
Have you noticed a decline in violations since then?
I don't know if I've noticed a decline in violations. What I do notice is when I attend these Face It seminars, the enthusiasm and the faces that when after they leave, they say, "Oh, I'm so glad that I learned that," or "So glad that somebody explained this to me."
Because I could have.
in terms I can understand. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
So I think over time we'll start seeing the fruits of
Well,
that.
and I shouldn't have asked that. That's a loaded question. I mean, you got to give it a 5-year time period at least to see how successful it is. You know.
I agree.
Now, and maybe I spoke wrong, incorrectly before. This is implemented in all circuits or just ours?
No, ma'am. This is an all circuit
Oh,
statewide. Yes.
terrific.
Yes.
Okay.
We have trained facilitators to conduct the seminars. So,
Wow. Okay, now you've got another program, the Fatherhood Program. Is that statewide as well?
It is, yes. But
wow.
we can take credit for that.
Okay.
The Deputy Circuit Administrator in Circuit 19, Adrian Stewart,
Right.
approached our Regional Director, Justine Patterson, with a plan to conduct a fatherhood program. He had the lesson plan already drafted up, and Mrs. Patterson, rather than contracting it out to an outside agency, insisted that we, here in Region 4,
Put it together.
put it together ourselves. So Mr. Stewart, when he was in Circuit 15 at the
Right.
time, conducted...
And that's Palm Beach County, correct?
That is correct,
Okay.
yes. He conducted the first fatherhood program to great success. They had 20 some odd graduates and great reviews. There was a bond formed with the gentleman in the class that you could tell was going to be a lifelong bond.
Wow.
When Mr. Stewart was promoted to his current position as Deputy Circuit Administrator, he brought the program with him here, and we enthusiastically started a class here. Our first class, which, as you well know, was at the library in Fort Pierce.
Right.
And you were one of our honored guest speakers one evening, so thank you for that. And again, the enthusiasm from the men. I'm a skeptical person by nature,
sure. I
and
understand.
something new,
Right.
and especially in the position that we're in right now, the men were there on their own accord.
Well, and that's what I want to bring up. This isn't a court-ordered, you got to go and complete this thing. This is something that is offered to men who are fathers, correct?
They don't have to be fathers.
Oh, they
could be
don't?
planning to be a father. Sure.
Wow.
Sure.
Okay, now I did not know that. Okay. And just basically, you have different speakers talk to them to motivate them to.
Sure, we have a lesson plan that we follow, and then some evenings there are guest speakers to come and speak to the men. But again, when it first started here in Circuit 19, I was a bit skeptical. We had a good turnout the first week because their probation officers recruited them.
Right.
And I said to myself, if half of the men show up next week, we'll be fine.
But they all showed up, didn't they?
To a person. So, and,
Wow.
and that's when it hit me that
Whoa.
this is making an impact.
Oh, that's great.
So, and then the 8-week course, by the end of the 8 weeks, a bond, you felt the bond.
Right.
I know you witnessed it firsthand.
Right.
Judge Schwab, our chief judge here in Circuit 19, he was our keynote speaker at the graduation.
Oh, I was just going to ask, you have graduations?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And Judge Schwab felt the bond and was very impressed with the group, and is encouraging us to continue and also to form an alumni program of the men who go through the fatherhood program and still can keep in touch.
Wow.
So yeah, we're very excited.
Are you on your second class now, your third class?
Our second class is going to start in March. Yes.
Okay. Oh, great. Well, you know, we all, especially if you've been involved in the system for a long time, it's easy to be skeptical, to, you know, wonder why you're trying so hard to help people. But, you know, you do see the difference, you do see the success, you do see that taking the time and caring can help. It's not going to help 100% of them. That's foolish. But if half of them are never back within the system again, you know, boy, is it worthwhile.
Sure,
you know.
Sure. You got to consider even someone who's incarcerated. They're going. 80% of our population is going to be out on the streets someday.
Yeah.
A big challenge for us is some of them aren't, you know, have low education, substance issues, mental health issues,
Poverty,
right? Unstable environments to return to. So those are our challenges that our population has, even on the community correction side.
Right.
It would behoove us as an agency to help correct some of those, or help the offenders along in with some of these challenges.
Right.
For bottom line is public safety.
Safety, absolutely.
So.
And, you know, for those, you know, of course, because of what I do, you can't do this job without being a believer in humanity and knowing that good things do happen. I mean, if you didn't, you couldn't do this job, and you couldn't do yours either, really. But for the naysayers, for the skeptics, and you're more, you know, you're law enforcement. You're, you know, even you see the good that it does, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. There's nothing even when I was an officer.
Right.
And you know, we have lives too, and we go to the store, and there was nothing more satisfying than having someone who I supervised
come up to
me and shake my hand and say, "You helped me so much."
Right. Right.
That's basically, I think, why we do what we do.
Oh, yeah, and it's funny, people don't understand that. But if you didn't have that, you couldn't keep doing what you do. But people don't realize how often that does happen, too. You know, those who have never been involved in the criminal justice system, whether it be personally or a family member, and there's many people who haven't touched it in any way, don't realize that good things can happen.
Absolutely. This doesn't have to define this moment in time in this individual's life should not define them.
Exactly. To break that cycle.
Break the cycle.
Well, what if you can conjure up, and if you can't, it's okay. Tell me whether when you were a probation officer or now, if you've got any great stories, maybe from the fatherhood program of someone that you took the time for, that you helped, that you saw 5 years later and they're the CEO of Coca-Cola or whatever. Maybe not that, but.
Well, I was just saying the other day when we were pitching the fatherhood program to our colleagues in the Keys.
Right.
how I'm a father myself,
Right.
two young children and one college age.
Right.
And I even took some of the tips that were given out in the
Wow.
class from the individuals who were in attendance.
Right.
So that made me realize that
How important.
this was to them and to the entire population, to be quite honest with you.
Exactly.
So.
Do you and do you think, and you're not going to believe this, I told you before the show that we've just got a couple more minutes and then we're done. I know there's tons more we can talk about too, but what's your crystal ball, if you will, Joe? Do you feel this pendulum kind of staying in the middle? You know, you've seen it, you know, all over the spectrum. Are you feeling that we'll continue to have an alchemy of rehabilitation and punishment, or do you think it's starting to move? What's your sense?
I'd like to think that it stays right where it's at, because again, it all starts at the top with the governor and the legislature, and they have provided ample funding for staffing issues. For the longest time, our agency was understaffed.
Right.
That problem is being resolved as we speak.
Right.
And then programs, both in the institutions and on the community corrections side. Major emphasis is being put towards programs and rehabilitative issues.
And we didn't touch on this, and I don't want to end the show without talking about it. There has been funding and implementation of programs within the prison system. I mean, with you're overseeing people who are out of jail, out of prison. But there's been a lot of funding and emphasis put on prison programs as well, correct?
Correct. And as a matter of fact, with last year's budget, money was allocated to hire 200 additional teachers for GED courses and educational courses for those who are incarcerated.
Wow. See, that shame on whoever's, you know, that should be sung from the highest mountain, because I should know that, and I did not know that until now. That much money and FTEs, you know, people were allocated for prison in prison programs.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Of course, the institution is there to correct behavior.
Obviously.
Because that's their primary duty. But it's also, we're gearing ourselves towards positive outcomes.
Right.
With the mindset that the individuals will be on the street someday, and wouldn't it be nice to have a decent law-abiding citizen who served their debt to society and now is a productive member of society?
Well, thank you for all you do. Obviously, we're ending on a good note. There's hope. There's people aren't giving up, whether it's here locally or in the legislature, and that's a beautiful thing. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you for having me.